more week. Here we are. We are continuing our never ending quest, it seems, to ensure that we are indeed getting masks and PPE and all the necessary information for all of our loved ones all across the country who are indeed struggling to make it through this pandemic, a pandemic called COVID-19, coronavirus. And indeed, this pandemic is still disproportionately ravaging so many of our communities all across the country. And so, thank you all for joining us week to week. We got a great lineup of guests that are happening and coming on this week to help us be able to make sense of some of the things that are happening in the world, but also to give us an opportunity to hear some hopeful stories of ways people are trying to change the world, literally change the world where they live and where they work and where they hang out. All of these moments, we have to keep reminding ourselves that there is lots of hope, lots of bright lights out in the world, and we have no need to be overwhelmed or overcome by the hopelessness that can sometimes grab a hold to us real good. And so it's a good day to be alive. Please go to livefreeusa.org and donate. Keep donating. We are wanting to continue to provide the free supply chain of masks and PPE, masks and PPE to help continue to get masks out to the people. Now, we don't have our guest host here today. Kamal Bell and Steve Kerr are having to deal with some of their real-time job responsibilities. And so they're going to be popping in and out for the rest of this month. And so it's just me today. It's just me hanging out with you and our amazing, mighty guests that are going to come on and help us to have some really good conversation about the things that are happening. Let's be mindful, everybody, that as we go through this season, it's going to be critically important for all of us to stay close to one another and to support and protect and love on one another. Many of you may have heard this week, last week, that my church, where we house all of our PPE, all of our personal protective equipment, we have about 50 something thousand masks still here and a bunch of sanitizer that is still here. Our worship space, our church, was vandalized by an arsonist, attempted to burn down our building. And literally, the day we put up a Black Lives Matter sign on the front of our church, that prompted, we believe, someone to set fire to the rear of our church through trash cans, rubber trash cans, and a metal trash container, and lit the whole joint on fire. And I'm so appreciative for the neighbors that were very attentive and were paying attention to what they heard and saw, and rushed out of their home and ran the assailant off, and also attempted to put the fire out, and were able to manage it until the firefighters and the police department came. And so we've been dealing with that literally for the last the last 5 or 6 days. It's been quite an ordeal. And so certainly we're so glad that there was no uh, harm done to any individuals. Our external wall for our building was scorched up pretty good, but no internal damage. We needed to get new trash cans, obviously, because the fire burned so hot it melted our trash containers down. And of course, left a few of us pretty shaken, both emotionally and mentally, pretty frustrated about it. But nevertheless, we are pressing on, which goes to show you that sometimes the work that you and I are called to do, whether it is good work, whether it is hard work, whether it is challenging work, as our now ancestor John Lewis tells us, it sometimes requires us to get into good trouble. And so that's what we are in. We are all smack dab in the middle of some good trouble right now as we continue to press on, both as it relates to COVID-19 and certainly the original kind of evil of this country, that of genocide and white supremacy at the hands of the colonizing forces that have set upon so many of us in ways that are just so terribly painful and hurtful. So this is a bright light. I want you to keep remembering that. Sometimes you can curse the darkness, but sometimes you got to also speak into the light. And that's what we're here to do for the next several moments, is bring some folks into the room that can help us speak into the light and give us a little bit of inspiration. And so I'm super excited to have these loved ones here. Now, again, if you're hanging out with us for the first time, we are Mass for the People. Started a humanitarian campaign, myself, W. Kamau Bell, Steve Kerr, so many others, back in April, the first Monday in April. And we have literally every Monday been cooking ever since. We've been hosting loved ones from both the community, loved ones from some of the cities we've been working with, some of our activist friends and comrades. We've had some folks on here every week to just keep reminding us about the importance of supporting one another through this terrible, terrible pandemic. And so this weekly tap-in show is always an opportunity for us to give some updates and to let folks know what has been happening and what is happening. And so currently, we are excited to just keep reporting that we have masks going out all across the country. We just put in another order of 1 million masks. Yep, 1 million more masks have been bought and they have arrived. And those masks are scheduled to hit a number of the cities like Chicago and like Detroit and like Texas. Houston, Texas is a new city that's just come on board. We're sending some masks to Orlando and to Miami to continue to address some of the spikes that are happening there. And another great thing that has happened is we've launched the Freedom Summer with the Black Church Action Fund, Faith for Black Lives, and some other comrades. And so we're sending masks literally to about 6 or 7 more cities across the country as a part of Freedom Summer, to make sure that we can register people to vote, make sure that people can request an absentee ballot. So as you can see, so much happening, so much going on, but it's all good and righteous work, and we can only do it because of your support and your love. So stay with us, hang with us. We got a lot of ways to go today, but to get us started off, I'm so excited to bring in the wonderful Amber Theoharis. Amber Theoharis is joining Mass for the People. What's up, Sister Amber?
What's up? Welcome into my house. You're here in my home with me, and I feel special to have you as my guest.
Well, I'm honored to have you as my guest, and you have quite the wonderful interior decorator, I must add. And
you're looking at her. You're looking at her.
Whoa! Now let
I
me
did
see.
it myself.
As I read your bio, I don't see that on here. So
no, but it's my home.
Talented.
That's my home, and you know what? If you want it to be your home, you gotta make it your own home. You know,
yes.
I come from a very humble family, and you know, my mom made our house beautiful with whatever we had. She was such a good decorator, and I think I got that from her. You got to make it a home.
Yeah, well, it looks beautiful. Let me read your bio. Amber Theoharis is an Emmy award-winning journalist, filmmaker, tech executive who has appeared on the NFL Network, Fox Sports, FS1, the NFL on Westwood One, and Sirius XM. She's currently the VP. All right, Sister Vice President. Are you in consideration with Joe Biden? You already got the Vice President.
You know, hey, if I get the call, I'll be his running mate. I'm right up there. I'm ready.
VP of Original Program Development for Clickstream Corporation, soon to be the Win Quick app, a synchronized mobile and digital gaming platform, and prominent voice and advocate for women's empowerment and youth sports. She's partnered with the Cal Ripken Foundation, and they have raised over $9 million to serve underprivileged young people across the country through sports. And she is a super amazing sister. The Weight of Gold, co-produced by Michael Phelps, debuted on July 29th, where she was a writer and a producer. And I'm just so excited to have you. W. Kamau Bell and Steve Kerr send their regrets they couldn't jump on the call with me, so you're stuck with the bootleg preacher. But I just want you to know we are so glad to have you. Welcome to Mass for the People.
Thank you so much for having me. And there is nothing bootleg about you. I'm honored. I'm honored to be here and that you had me as your guest.
Yes, yes, yes. Now tell us a little bit about your journey and your story. You are quite the champion for women's empowerment. We should expect nothing less, of course, in this moment and in this time where often we see the kinds of issues that are raising in the society, sometimes because of the people who are in leadership. They bring to the forefront sometimes issues that may at times be in the background. Of course, because we have, I call him at times the misogynist in chief, in the White House, right? He has made women who are champions and advocates all the more important. Talk a little bit about why this is such an important part of your career and your work, and why it's needed now more than ever.
Well, thank you for such a good question. I mean, the reason why I'm an advocate, I was born an advocate. You know,
Mm.
my mother was part of the women's rights liberation and movement back in the 70s. You know, first woman in her family to go to college, put herself through college. You know, she was there. The protests were, I'm from the Washington, D.C. area. So I think I got that fight from my mom. And you know, I mean, my dad's tough too. I don't want to leave him out there.
It's like,
Um,
hey, what about Pop? And we
yeah,
talking about the sisters
no,
today, so the
he's
fellas
the
get
first
enough shine.
feminist. He's the
Yes.
people forget. People say, "Who are some of the best feminists you know?" And I say, "My father." He
Wow.
raised two girls to be strong women that were going to make a difference in the world, and he made us believe that we were no different than anybody. And so he's the ultimate feminist, right? He wanted to
Yeah.
promote women's positioning within the world. So you know, being in the NFL and being in sports for 20 some years, you know, I came on the scene in the late 90s when, you know, women were a token role, like, hey, we'll throw you
Mm.
on the sidelines, and if you're pretty, you know, you can stay there, but God forbid you hit 40, and then we'll get another and it for me, you know, being raised in such a household where it was all about equality, it was a big shock to see that the world didn't see me the way I saw myself. I saw
Wow.
myself as, you know, I was an excellent student in college. I'm kind of a dork. I love reading and knowledge. And just to know that no matter what I said, no matter how hard I worked as a journalist, that there would be times where people just saw a female or just judged you on your looks. And
Mm.
then just, I think a lot like the African American and minority community, just a lot of the microaggressions that you hear, especially being in a male dominated profession. I was often the only woman at the table, and you kind of have those moments where you're alone and you're looking around like there's nobody else here to support me. And so I really wanted to make it my mission to bring more women to prominent roles within the television and film industry. um, and really having kids and I have two daughters and a son. Too many bad things had happened to me. I lost a show on maternity leave just for having a baby.
Wow.
um,
Oh no.
yeah, just a lot of things I wanted to talk about and bring them to the forefront. And I wanted to pass my daughters a better world than the one that I got, because my mom tried to do her best, but I could tell the pain that she had when she saw some of the things that happened to me in a male dominated industry. She almost felt like, you know, I fought so hard so you guys didn't have to do that. My take is like, well, look, Mom, I would have never been a sports journalist had you not
Mm.
fought.
Mm.
You know, back then women were teachers, secretaries,
Yeah.
assistants. So I did benefit from her, and I want my kids to look back at this time and say, when the world was awakening and we had this movement, my mom was doing something.
Yeah,
So
you
thank
know,
you for that.
that's so important, because sometimes, you know, when you're a trailblazer or one of the first kind of generation of a thing, you know, you kind of have to fight fights that people just take for granted, right? I mean, did
Yeah.
you grow up like a sports person, or did you just kind of pivot into that as you were kind of in college, nerding and geeking out, as you said?
I was always an athlete when I was nerding and geeking out. I come from like sports family. You know, my dad always coached baseball and softball. My mom is an athlete. My sister's a phys ed teacher in Baltimore. So we
Wow.
all kind
Yeah.
of went down that path. We were always at some. I come from a big family on both sides, so we were always at somebody's games, you know, a cousins or somebody. So it was just such a part of my life, and I loved sports. And I didn't even look back on the 80s and say I didn't have women to look up to at the time, but I really didn't. The first one I
Mm.
remember is Linda Cohen on ESPN.
Sports Center. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first one, but that was about 92, I want to say,
I
maybe
know
91.
that
I
was,
was
yeah.
already like 14 years old. So
Right.
I just looked at the men and thought, that's what I want to do. I never thought like, oh, women can't do that. So
Right, right. Well, it's a fascinating thing how life kind of, you know, you pursue a passion, and then it gives you some unexpected turns, and then that passion actually becomes a source of being able to help people. And that's kind of what you've been able to do, right? I was just looking over some of the work that you've done, and being able to turn your passion for sports into a pathway to help young people and kids and young girls kind of like find purpose and opportunities. Talk a little bit about that work you've been able to do, because that is similar to what we're trying to do for Mass for the People. Sometimes just give people opportunity, you know, like use charity and generosity and passion to help make a way. And it seems like you did a big effort in Baltimore with your youth programming there.
Baltimore is my home, and I grew up in between Baltimore and DC, but I worked professionally in Baltimore for a long time in TV, and so that community I'm close to, and it's a community that's really struggling right now. And I really feel like if you could pick one city in the United States that's sort of a microcosm of what is happening right now. I mean, everything from the riots in 2015 there, all the way up to all that's going on now. As I said, my sister's a teacher in Baltimore County and Baltimore City. The kids don't have heat in the classrooms. We all remember those national pictures of them wearing their coats, going to school. So I think if you got to start by taking care of your own, and it grows in from there. And that this opportunity came to me through my relationship with Cal Ripken, who is an amazing man. Him and his brother Billy Ripken and the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation brought me on at first just to MC, hometown girl emceeing some of their big gala where they would raise money. But then it became more of a partnership, and them trying to expand to the West Coast and us helping each other. And the biggest thing that I love about their program is that they're not just Baltimore. They started there. They started with building sports fields at ground zero where the West Baltimore riots happened in 2015. So taking those abandoned buildings in that rundown area and building something beautiful. And their goal was to give kids somewhere safe to go, because a lot of kids in those areas don't have that. And another thing that they do that is really cool and really relative in the light of what happened to George Floyd is he does something called Badges for Baseball, where they take kids from the neighborhood in Baltimore and they pair them. The coaches on those fields are police officers. A lot of them police officers grew up in that neighborhood, but there's such a misunderstanding between the police and the people. And if we could start at a young age by making them know each other, then when that police officer's walking down the street, you see a young man doing something, they say, no, that's Billy from, I coached him, we know him. And it creates a trust too with the children of the neighborhood, because a lot of the neighborhood children there, the first experience with police is negative. It's whether it's brutality, whether it's arresting their parents, visiting jails. So this is a way to sort of foster that relationship so that we don't have these confusing situations that lead to violence.
Yeah, well, I think it's so fascinating because we did a lot of work in Baltimore right after the uprising. We call them uprisings, not riots, in our movement.
Yeah.
But
okay, uprising, the uprising.
Yeah, Baltimore uprisings. Yeah, and we have found that in a lot of cities where certainly there are more members of the community who are in law enforcement, you do see some of the community trust building work happening. But I think some of the challenge we have in a lot of our cities, which is what's leading a lot of these conversations, especially during COVID, is so many of our cities are just underfunded for resources like are just basic, because so much money goes into prisons and jails and policing and crime prevention. And so one of the things that I love about what I hear some of the work you're doing is it's trying to make sure that we are investing in more like enrichment programs and not trying to continue to just respond to some of the worst conditions of our folks with some of these challenges. Do you find that as the program and your programming around sports continues to grow in other cities, that you're still able to scratch that itch of your love for sports vicariously through the programming, or you kind of miss sometimes, like, you know what? I wish I could be back on the field doing some.
I'll get back out there. I'll take any kid on that I'm working with. They can step to me all they want. I will show them that I have a lot more experience than them. But no, it's
like you still can talk that smack, huh?
Oh, I schooled my daughter. I schooled my daughter in basketball. I came from a big basketball program within the state of Maryland, and in the girls' basketball program. And my sister and my daughter thinks, she's hot stuff right now. So sometimes you got to go out there and let them know you got it from your mother.
All right. Like that third generation, like sports hoopster.
Yeah, you got to pass it on. But I think going back to what you're saying about young women, especially, I always was an athlete, and so I always knew from a young age that my body and being female was powerful, and my body was powerful, and it wasn't for sexual reasons or objectified reasons that I should get attention. I should get attention for my physical prowess and competition. And I think that is there's no better lesson that young girls can take out of sports is how to take care of their bodies, respect their bodies. Their bodies have another purpose other than reasons that sometimes are put upon them in a young age.
Yeah.
And so we have a program at the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation called I'm Great, and it's girls respecting each other and themselves. So
Come on
stopping the
now.
bullying, stopping the bullying. Yeah,
Girls respecting each other and themselves.
exactly. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that's the best thing I have. If I could focus all my work on one thing, it really would be the young women, just raising the strongest group that we can and passing
Right.
all of the hurt and the knowledge and the pain that I've had to go through and trying to be a block for them and trying to be they're the running backs and I'm the fullback. I want to be out there blocking for them, and I want
Yeah.
them to have smooth paths.
Yeah.
And that's my goal.
Talk about your storytelling and production work because it seems like you're now creating it more than just sports programs, but now you're actually creating stories. Which again, in some of the work that we do, we know it's important for people to see themselves, right? Like
Mhm.
in images and on the screen and in magazines, and if they see themselves, then they feel like they belong wherever they see themselves, and
Mhm.
so you've turned now into a producer and you've got your own. I mean, you blowing it all up. So talk about that transition and what made you feel like I need to now move into producing content and images and material. Talk about this new project you got coming out. Or I think it's already dropped,
It
right?
came out Wednesday. Yeah, it
Came
dropped
out
Wednesday
Wednesday.
on HBO. So check it
Give
out.
it.
It's The Weight of Gold. It's a project I started in 2016. It's taken many twists and turns, but ultimately, I think it's a great look for people that maybe are suffering from depression and anxiety and don't really understand it. Or maybe if they don't, people that don't suffer, but they don't understand it. I think seeing some of the most mentally strong athletes in the world, which are our Olympians that we look up to,
Mm,
seeing them be honest about their struggles, and just kind of the toxic environment that training for the Olympics your whole life creates. It doesn't give you any skills to be a person out in the real world.
wow.
Once you fall off that balance beam, or once you win 8 gold medals, like Michael Phelps, it it just creates a very singular focused person where all of their self-worth and their identity is in one thing.
Mm,
And so I think it'll open up some discussions and start to erase the stigma about mental health, which is something I'm very serious about. I just think we need to, especially in underserved communities, it's hard enough for rich people, for privileged people to get the right help. They say on average, it takes about 10 years for a person to be diagnosed with depression, actually get the right therapy, actually be on the right medication. And that's people that have money, because every time you go to a therapist, it costs money. A lot of plans don't cover mental health services. So it's a real epidemic across all socioeconomic groups, and it hits the hardest to the ones that can't even begin that process because
yeah.
they don't know where to begin.
Yeah, yeah, mental illness, particularly right now in this season of COVID, is such a terrible, terrible weight to add onto the already, feels like Herculean burden people have to carry with just figuring out how do we navigate in a
Yeah.
global pandemic, right?
Well, losing your jobs, losing your livelihood, and then you
Yeah,
lose your health insurance. And so maybe people that were being treated for depression and medication was working, now they're off.
yeah,
It just, yeah, this is a very tough situation for people that struggle with mental illness. And I hope that they maybe are sitting at home and watch the HBO movie and say, wow, if Michael Phelps felt like that, I'm not alone. I'm not
yeah,
alone. Maybe I could start to be honest with some people around me that I need help,
yeah.
because I don't want to lose more people.
Yeah, that's a very righteous cause, because it is indeed the case. Sometimes we need to see some of our quote unquote heroes going through some of our same challenges in a very vulnerable way. It allows us, again, just talking about representation on a bigger screen. It helps you to hopefully see that, wow, if this person was able to overcome, then maybe I need to take that journey myself.
Yeah, yeah, and representation, like you say, I think that is so important to me, because I see the impact of when a child can look at somebody that looks like themselves, and all of a sudden, I don't know what the psychology is behind it, but all of a sudden the world opens to them.
That's right.
And they start to get ideas. And I think as an executive, I'm working with Clickstream, you have an obligation. It doesn't matter what race you are, it doesn't matter how old you are, what gender you are, you have an obligation to look around your staff and look around, especially your leadership and your executive staff, the big positions, and say, why don't we have more women? Why don't we have more minorities? Because there isn't a company in the world that isn't better when you have multiple different viewpoints coming into your creative process. And I can't even imagine a world, and I can, because I've worked in it, where you're sitting at a table and everybody looks the same.
Wow.
And maybe even one other person looks different. And it's funny how many times you two connect eyes. Like, are you thinking what I'm thinking?
Right.
And you can make this situation better, the product better, the film better, whatever, but you're kind of put in a box because you don't have allies there with you. And that was my goal. I had hiring talent for the WinQuick app. When I came on board, they already had 3 people hired, and they were all white men. And there was 3 more positions left. And I just made a commitment. There's no reason that we shouldn't have diversity, because there are so many talented people out there. How can you say you can't find one person that can make us better that doesn't look like that?
Right. Right.
So I think it does take a really conscious effort from executives, and you're starting to see it. It used to be, I think, before this recent awakening with the unfortunate murder of George Floyd. But before that, it was kind of like, oh, well, we're gonna hire a woman, or we're gonna hire a Black person, and then we check that box, and so we're good, so we're not gonna get sued, or we look like we're. But now I think people are really starting to see the benefit of diverse brains and diverse viewpoints and experiences with life, and actually realizing, no, it's not like, oh, we have to hire that woman, we have to hire them.
Yes.
They're gonna make us better.
Yes.
And that's what I try to do as an executive. And then with my storytelling, with my film, I try to be, what I say, an artivist.
Art? Come on, you better throw that word out there like you just rolled off your tongue. You an artivist. I'm
an artivist. I've always been an activist in so many different ways, but I'm also a storyteller and a creator and a dreamer. And so if you can look around and say, okay, what is my skill, and what can I do to be a better activist? If you're an executive and a business person or whatever, what is your skill? Look around and say, I'm really good at talent development. Let me get some more minorities in the pipeline. Let me get some more women in the pipeline and help develop them. So when the position comes, nobody can say, well, they're not qualified.
Right.
They're trying to do that right now in the NFL with female coaches and minority head coaches. There needs to be an effort. And so with the storytelling, my artivism comes from, there's tons of stories out there that are not told, or history is the story of the victor, right?
Yeah.
It's not the story of the loser. Well, I kind of want to tell the story of the loser, or I want to tell the story of the oppressed, because that's where the truth is.
Yeah.
That's where the real truth is usually. And I'm working on a film right now with amazing production partners, Kelcrest Media. And we're putting together a film called The Black Aces that is telling one of those stories.
Yes.
It was one of those stories I heard about, and you can't sleep at night.
Yeah.
And I teach at USC as well. I teach sports commentary, and when I try to teach
sleep, girl, you busy.
It's fun. I'm blessed to work. Times when I haven't had work. So you're just thankful to work. And I teach my students. Now you have me laughing. I could have.
We talk about Black Aces. I'm sorry.
Oh, the Black Aces. Yes. I tell them, when you're looking for stories, it's not obvious to you right away. There's stories all around you that you'll hear in your life, and any movie maker or journalist or filmmaker will hear these stories. It's the one that you wake up in the middle of the night, maybe 2 or 3 times, and you say, I can't believe nobody has told this story. And then you start doing research. You're like, there has to be something about it. and you realize what a gap there is in the truth in history. And that's where I think the light comes in, and it allows people like me and to use my gifts that God gave me as a writer to put that out there and say, hey, I'm not going to let you run from the truth. I'm going to be unapologetic and not sugarcoat it and tell you what happened.
Look, y'all better keep your eye on Amber Theoharis. She don't work. She's a sports fanatic. She tells stories. She's teaching in a university. She's raising money for kids' sports programs. I thought I had a whole lot of jobs and I was busy. You are shaking up the world. On your way out the door, what's the best sports story you covered in your career? You look back and be like, man, I really enjoyed this. This was really just covering this sports story. I don't know if, it was Baltimore Ravens beating my San Francisco 49ers. I hope that wasn't your favorite story, because then we're going to have some friction on the way out the door.
Yeah, it's okay. We can talk about this off camera. We can settle it outside. No, that was a great moment, because that was actually the first Super Bowl I covered with NFL Network. So I saw Cal Ripken there and all the Baltimore athletes that I covered, Jonathan Ogden and Ray Lewis, and just everybody there was a really cool moment. I've had a few of those moments. I've hosted Thursday Night Football, and you're sitting up there on a set and they're counting you down, and you look over and your co-hosts are Deion Sanders, Michael Irvin, LaDainian Tomlinson, Willie McGinnis, and you're sitting there going, okay, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
Ooh, don't mess up.
Look, Mama, I made it.
But you don't. You actually have the feeling of don't mess this up. I remember probably one of the biggest moments for me was I had been through a lot at that network with sexism and things like that. And I had Marshall Falk, one of my colleagues, look at me right before one of those first shows. They're counting us down, the crowd's going, and he looks at me and he says, you deserve to be here. A woman of your stature worked your butt off, and you deserve to be here. Have that attitude through the show. So I love Marshall forever for the guys, the men that I worked with there, not the executives, but the actual coworkers and football players. Amazing. They always stood next to me. They're feminists till the end, and a lot of them have daughters, and I appreciate them so much for that.
Girl dads. I'm a girl dad too. All power
girl
to
dads.
Thank you so much, Amber, for joining us. Listen, everybody, I want y'all to please go and follow Amber first and foremost, and make sure that you are supporting all of her projects. The Weight of Gold. I can't wait to watch this particular program, because in a moment where we are dealing with mental health and all kind of intersecting issues, I think this could be a great contribution to help us take good care of ourselves. So thanks so much for coming on through here, sister girl, and big shout out to Kristen Ingram. I know y'all are homies, and
that's my girl.
I appreciate her and Plus One for getting us all connected up.
Thank you so much, Pastor Mike, and I really appreciate what you're doing for the people. It really is amazing. You're using your gift from God, and I applaud you for that.
Well, thanks so much, and we'll see each other down the road, I'm sure, again.
All right, pleasure.
All right. Amber Theoharis, everybody, isn't that amazing? All the great work that she is doing and has done to make sure that we have some opportunities moving out into the community for people who are in need, and particularly this issue around ensuring that our sisters, our girls, our women have positive images. It's not by accident that this whole show is pretty much just a bunch of powerful sisters and women who are not taking a back seat to anybody. And I'm super excited to bring into the room. She was supposed to came on last week, but she was out in the field shaking up Kentucky. Kentucky ain't even ready for the great Chanel Helm from the Black Lives Matter Louisville. Come on in the room, girl. Bring your fire and bring your brilliance. The great Chanel Helm is here. Look at that. Look at that one hood. Woo, woo.
Hey. Yes.
How you doing,
How
Chanel?
are you doing?
Girl, it sometimes it be like this.
Right. It does be like that. Shoot, it's been a great and juicy 2 months. But it's also been really challenging and tiring.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like what our ancestry, right? So been doing amazing work with the build. About to get a grocery store that we had to do. So we had to. We've been fortunate to be funded with our bail fund, the Louisville Community Bail Fund, doing some amazing work with a lot of the different people out of there, getting people out of our jail here that is being ran over by COVID,
Mm.
and then doing some amazing work against our mayor. I just love the way the different sectors of the city have come across and come together to like really push for him to get out of office, because he has really failed us. So
Yeah.
that's been some of the most amazing work that we've taken so far. But just seeing people come together and embrace Say Her Name is one of the major things that I think has really been awesome.
Well, I'm a big follower and fan of the great Chanel Helm. You know, you have been doing organizing work in Louisville for quite some time, and you know, sometimes tragic moments require leadership to just emerge, and you don't become a leader overnight. You literally prepare your whole life by being mentored and making mistakes and winning and then recalibrating. And so I just want folks to appreciate who that we are talking to. We are talking to one of the baddest sister organizers out here in the country. And she has been at the center of a lot of the organizing on the ground to bring justice to Breonna Taylor. And we are still waiting for justice for Breonna Taylor and many others. Now, I became familiar with Louisville because one of the young Herring boys, Alvin Herring, and a lot of his sons are from there. And I remember we had some folks come to Ferguson when I was there, hanging out, and we started to get a connection there. And I just started to follow Louisville ever since 2015. And you know, I had no idea Louisville was so racist. I mean, you know, particularly the police department there is off the chain. I remember they put out some statement a few years ago about the activists and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, these folks
The
are just on
FOP,
paper.
the FOP, the
The
FOP.
FOP off the chain. Talk a little bit of just
Mhm.
about the legacy of why you have to organize in Louisville, because it is not a place where, you know, Black folks still and others are still struggling just for basic kind of quality of life issues.
Yeah, I think when we've been talking about like defunding the police and really this work of what Black Lives Matter or the movement for Black Lives is set and dating, including like Live Free and stuff, is that we are really pushing a movement to abolish this
Mm.
entire system. And we are so fortunate now that people are actually here in Kentucky and seeing this. This is the legacy. This is the place where they train folks up. I don't
Mm.
think a lot of folks remember or want to remember this is the state that claimed that it was, a border state during the Civil War, also claimed that it had, this group of abolitionists who were supposed to be doing like this bomb work, but also trained up people on how to steal slaves,
Wow.
would sell you down the river. This is where this comes from. And that would mean making sure that you get to Louisville and you went down the Mississippi from the Ohio River Valley. So this is what this is right now. And it's given light to like that has not stopped. So to
Mm.
keep, being surprised that they don't protect and serve us, they never did.
Mm.
They're corrupt, they always have been. That's just a part of their job. They are stealing people, the jump outs. That's what's really cracking me up. And it's weird that folks hear us in one sense. You come out and you join us, and then it happens to you, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh. So that's kind of like what's happening in this moment, and I'm glad Louisville is like a center stone for that right now, one of the major uprising cities. Because what did you think we was out here for?
Right,
Like,
right.
what did you
Isn't
think
that
we was
isn't
out
that
here
funny?
for?
That's so funny, Chanel, because I get that from folks too. I think people think like all of us who do organizing, activism, protest, the whole gamut. Folks just think we just don't got nothing else better to do. Like we just wake up every day. We like, you know what? We just want to go find a cause to shut something down. As if we don't want to like just go enjoy a movie or some ice cream or with your family. And so to your point, when people had that encounter, they're like, "Oh, this what y'all been talking about." I'm like, "Yes, we've been talking about this. I mean, for our lives and our ancestors been talking about it for 300 some years, non-stop. It's a deep thing, deep
For
thing.
years, and decades even, right? like from the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement. This is the reason why you see that change happen rapidly in this Black liberation movement, is because we are determined to put an end to this. This is our legacy. And people are
Mm.
still making a joke about it. Just this weekend, we had the Cuban community come out against BLM, not just us, but other folks, because we came together as a collective to talk about the gentrification problem. One of the pieces that the lawyers are trying to make is around gentrification, something that a lot of us who've been raised in Louisville forever have been making. For the past 90 years, Louisville has used revitalization and neighborhood awareness and these different grants to racially banish Black people. That means you die or you go to jail. There
Wow.
is no like cute displacement where we're just going to move you over here, or you know how they happen in other cities. No, they have been taking and stealing people. 1 in 3, just out of one community project alone, are in prison from Louisville, one of the most incarcerated zip codes in the nation. And it
Wow.
happens here with a legacy of building property on the blood of Black bodies. This is not a colloquialism. This is the truth. And so we are making those connections and making those dots. And one of those areas happens to be a place that they want to rename Nulu, you know, those cute little shortened names or whatever. And so we know what
Nulu.
that means. Thank you. New Louisville. That's what you mean. On the back in a Black neighborhood, which you still make a profit from,
Mm.
that you still make a profit from while you displace and you know, gyp the people who still live there. You call the police on them. Down the street is the homeless shelter. So the action was really cute. It was really fluffy. It was you know, I don't like fluffy actions, but hey, you know, they did it. They shut down the street and they had a block party and just threw this block party right there and set out a table, long table out, and asked for the business to join them and gave them their demands. And it was really nice. Their demands along with a letter. And you know what? Here's some people who we respect and who we know can get you together. You know what I'm saying? Gave
Right.
you the resources to get yourself together. Now that day, that business didn't have a problem because they watched them from the roof. And they sat there and they watched as the police violently took some people. And then all of a sudden, a few days later, you know, he wants to compare what he went through as a way of being in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, you know, one that is more aligned to what was happening to Black Cubans at the time. Like, we have to be
Mm.
clear about who is actually in America and what reasons, and
Right.
who is not and what reasons. So we're
Right.
not lost on that at all. We're
Right.
not lost on it at all. And these are young folks. These are like early 20 folks who are like, we're going to send you these demands and you're going to answer these demands. But what we're not getting ready to do is make new narratives where they are not. So I'm so proud of them. And one of them is my little
Yeah.
cousin. I'm so proud of them because they are standing to their guns and they are working with these other businesses to either sign on, get your grade of allyship, and let's move it forward. And in solidarity with us, one of the major nonprofits, the Phoenix Hill Neighborhood Association, came out to say we do agree with the Occupy Nulu action. That's
Mm.
exactly what was needed. It needs to jar you, and if it took that jar to happen, and it happens. What we see time and time again, and you are so familiar with this, is that even our folk who are hit with the systemic racism, who
Mm.
are hit with, you know, your business as a small Black business owner is not doing well because they are, and they don't get that.
Right.
And then what does it mean to actually issue a business who can make dollars not only by the products that they sell, the services that they give? You don't even understand where these under table wallets sit at. And that's our
Mm.
goal. If we can't get the police officers fired and the FOP wants to play with these contracts and this bargaining agreement, which is where we're at, and sign that contract anyway, okay, we're getting ready to figure out where your money is at. And we
Right.
also are getting ready to figure out, like, if our mayor doesn't want to fire the police officers, who has the power to do that, and
The
you're
mayor
playing around,
does.
the mayor has absolute power to fire these officers, and he's sitting there playing
Mm. Mm. Mm.
day in and day out. Now he wants to get on the news and talk about how it's going to be a defining moment about what happens around Breonna Taylor. Let's be clear, because nobody moved until 2 months later. So like that's what's real key in this. Everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon around what happens with these folks when they're murdered by the police, but nobody moved when Breonna Taylor's family and friends, and her friends are
Right.
young, and her sister's friends are young, pushing that everywhere they could from March 13th until now. But they were the only ones that were doing that by themselves while Kenny was still in jail, for protecting his, a girlfriend. So it's really fascinating watching the elected officials blame each other, but particularly our mayor just trying to put himself in a place where he thinks it. I want to hear him say it. Do Black Lives Matter? And then 3 weeks later, his friend dies, but at the hands of the National Guard. And so where is that investigation at as well? Something that
Mm,
we need to be hearing up on, where they go into the hood who ain't protesting, the hood who
right.
wakes up and know that their black skin is a protest every day, and
Right.
rolled up into this neighborhood directly at that spot that pops off every night and shoots that man. So these young kids are putting those connections together. Who owns this? And these are the questions they're asking us, old heads. Who owns that? And just because that property happened over here, well, who's the developer? Who is this?
Mm, mm.
Giving them all of those keys. Oh, it's been so magical, and it's
Man,
been the most delicious.
if there is a silver lining to this crazy storm cloud we have, it is these young people, man. Like these young
Hey,
people are like on another level. Turn their analysis, they are thirsty,
hey,
they research. I mean, I love organizing with the youth. Their energy is so
yes.
contagious. But talk a little bit as someone who's been doing it pretty. You've been going hard. What would you say to us all, whether we in COVID or trying to continue to resist, self-care, you know what I'm saying, balance? Like I mean, I know some people ask me and I give them the nice answer, and I don't myself always live up to it, but we gonna act like we know what to do, even if we don't do it ourselves sometimes. But just talk a little bit of how do you stay grounded and stay focused on the task at hand without losing hope and things like that, because I think we could be surrounded all the time by a lot of terrible things that make us kind of lose a little hope, like helium coming out of a
Honey,
helium balloon.
do you hear me? Well, I am a mom, so a lot of times, they keep me going, even though they also the reason I won't give up sometimes. Just, you
Yes,
know what, I can't do it. They're
yes.
10 and 7 though.
Oh,
But yeah,
mine
that
are the same age. Mine are 11 and
are
8.
they?
Yeah.
Yes. We have lost our minds.
Yes, we
But
have.
they're in there now trying to keep each other quiet because I got two others that I'm watching, so 4 kids in here. But some of that, making sure we have like some support systems for us as mothers. I don't think a lot of people give us that credit, and I want to go ahead and claim that there are a lot of mothers that are on the front lines that are
Mm,
organizing the deep, deep trenches to move a lot of this work. Just about everybody that's a chapter lead with Black Lives Matter is a mother. So that's what makes a
right.
lot of the stuff that we're going through pretty painful, is because they see the work that happens on the ground, and they just don't know that a mighty mother or a group of mamas, some young
Mighty mother.
queer femmes are actually pushing that work, and they're pushing
Yeah.
that work from a place of love because they know what that looks like. We know what
Yeah.
that looks like. So I'm fortunate to be a part of the Bold family, the Black Organizers for Leadership and Dignity.
Yeah. Come on,
And
Bo.
so, right?
Out here being
Hey,
bold.
yes, Bold Black Love. Um, if nobody has heard of that, like one of our friends was like, "Oh, y'all cult," and I'm like, "Girl, stop it. We trying to get her in there. We are trying to get her in there." The word practice. So last year for me is when it really hit honed in. You know how you just like epiphany? Yes, practice, 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 practice. Everything that you do. You talked about that. Like sometimes we make mistakes, and
Yeah.
we've been beating ourselves up about these mistakes, and we forget we got to make mistakes for a period and a track that we've never been in, and that will always be new every time we wake up, every time we make a new step. Okay, so what do I need to do to make sure I do that? And part of that, I don't think a lot of people know, is that we practice different ways to center.
Mm.
And I just love it. And a lot of different practices to approach each other, even, like we're all in the same way. We're all in the same space. We're all, you know what it means when somebody's like, I'm overwhelmed. Okay, I've been there too. So how do we approach each other and work our way through that overwhelmness to get ourselves to like get centered and calm down, and then make sure we're answering what it is that I need. And that that dawned on me, yes, in coronavirus, like doing all of that organizing around coronavirus. I don't think a lot of people understood like that was the key moment for organizers. Oh, the pillars of power don't know what to do. Oh, hey, turn up. We got it. We got it. And so, yeah, it was like it was hectic, and I had to take that moment. And what I had been practicing doing is waking up before everybody else does, and just sitting and just being still, and just like listening to things around me, and just making sure that I'm okay, knowing that I'm here, knowing that I can remember what happened the day before. I don't think a lot of people understand that we're organizing. Your mind, mental space is in so many places. Your emotional space may have gotten tugged as hard as well. You may have gotten hurt. You may have not gotten hurt for the 13th time. And you just have to like really push away imposter syndrome. People don't understand. It's just like people try to erase you or your work,
Yeah.
and try to make sure that people understand that you're really lifting up somebody else's leadership. And how can I make sure that they're okay, but making sure I'm okay so I can even do that work.
Yeah.
So a lot of that has just been sitting by myself, paying attention to my body. What does my body feel right now? What can I just stop and put away when I feel this way? And like listening to that. What do I need to stop when I start to feel this way? And being able to do that. So we began like almost a month with daily calls in the morning. We've been trying to do them in the evening, but we were just shot. Like it was not working. So yeah, we don't even know. Everybody sounded like they was chewing bubble gum. So we begin to do daily calls in the morning, and that kind of helps better, even if you're in the bed, wherever you are, to be able to listen to your teammates and your squad mates talk about, how good they feel. So like 3 weeks ago, I was like, you know what, forget it. We just need to talk about how we feel first. Everybody wants to jump into these updates, and yes, I had the meeting and the thing, and it's like, no, let's not start our day out like that. We're already
Yeah.
doing that to ourselves. How are you? How do you feel right now? The wellness check-in. So we practice doing that first. Did you wake up feeling good? Did you not wake up feeling good? One person got on the day was like, I'm not in a great mood. And so I'm gonna leave the call, and that's how they got on the call and exit the call. So we
Yeah.
knew that there was one, a physical boundary, and one that they needed themselves. And I think it resonates when you're building up these spaces that you can be who you are and be able to do this work and feel how you feel. And then from there, we go into some updates, and it kind of helps because now you're ready to like support somebody else. Earlier you sound like you were overwhelmed. Do you think you have all the tools that you need to take on, that call? I can step up and do that for you. Where, sometimes you be in emotion, you be like, you ain't even got time to call nobody. So, it's look at you laughing. Yeah, it's been good that so far like
Well,
that.
I want to let you go, but give us a quick update on Breonna Taylor organizing. Like, what do you need us to do? What are folks? I mean, because the folks still ain't been arrested, and we care so much about this issue. Steve Kirk couldn't be here today, but as you can see,
Right.
all the NBA players, everybody is on the Breonna Taylor arrest Breonna Taylor's killers. Narrative. What are some concrete things you need support and folks in Louisville to make sure we can get this thing wrapped up because justice for Breonna Taylor is a necessity.
Unfortunately, you're looking at business as Louisville as usual for Louisville. Louisville has killed many people within the past year, within the past 3 years. An unbelievable amount of folks have been murdered in the typical ways that they have been. Actually, Breonna's situation has been one of the fastest we've seen thus far in a couple of years since Darnell Wilker, who was shot immediately leaving his home. So
Mm.
I I know for a fact that they're not going to arrest the officers. That's not a call of action that we've been taking, but we know that's what people want because you see that everywhere else. We need folks to understand that Louisville is not built that way, and we will
Mm.
continue to fight until Louisville is built that way, until we have abolished the police system, the carceral state, and that's where we're at. Because every piece of this belongs to that. It belongs from the place from when they're arresting you from your home, taking you to prison, bringing you back out, and murdering you on the street. So what we are still amplifying is they can be fired. They definitely can be fired, and that's what we need to push is for them to be fired. We don't know if that's coming from Daniel Cameron. that we can't really ask for a special prosecutor out of Louisville, and we know other folks did, but Louisville is the most leftist city in the state. So when you ask for a special prosecutor, it's going outside. Ain't no coming for no
Uh,
justice out in Kentucky. Come
I
on,
see.
y'all. Damn,
Yeah.
and that's a McConnell boy. So,
Wow.
the election was one of the tactics that we had. Really getting McConnell out of office is the thing. We are getting ready to enter a period with the electoral justice stuff going on, to ask for support around what does it look like holding Amy McGrath accountable. And that's something that we absolutely must do. And we need everybody from around this country to
So
hold her
look,
accountable.
I'm gonna put you and my friend Susie Schuster on a call together. Susie's one of our one of our Mass for the People supporters, and I don't know if Susie's watching now, but she's pretty tied in with McGrath's campaign. So I think I'm gonna put y'all together, and you and Susie can put your mind together. Have you all ever sat down with her yet, McGrath's
No, I
people?
don't think so.
So
I don't think so.
we go. Come on, girl. We about to
Do
make
you
that
hear?
happen.
You know how we do. You
Yeah,
know how we do.
we about to make that make that thing happen, and y'all gonna have some FaceTime, and we go button that up real good, because it is indeed the case, and I appreciate your local perspective, because sometimes we always say this: universal solutions don't create targeted outcomes. So the
Hey,
special prosecutor worked in Minnesota, but it won't work in Louisville. To your point, because you be going from bad to worse if you get somebody from a different part of the
child,
state, probably. So,
it's the good
but
old boy system down here.
yeah. Well, I'm glad to have you, Chanel, and we respect your work. We love your work. We love you and all the folks, comrades on the ground. Sometimes
Love
I
you
wish I could
too.
clone myself and be in 20 different cities at the same time, because we all move with the
Come
family.
on.
You want to be everywhere. But I know if
Yeah.
you there and all your comrades are there,
Yeah.
then it's good work happening there. So stay strong, be strong. We're gonna follow up offline on this piece with Susie, and of course, let's make sure we get the appropriate justice for not just Breonna Taylor. Of course, we want that, but as you've mentioned, so much other expressions of injustice happening there in Louisville, and we want that for y'all who really live there every day, raising kids and families. That's such a small baseline, right? Justice
Yeah.
for being killed. We want life, an abundant
Hey,
life for our kids, right? So stay
come on,
strong, keep up
abundant
the
life.
work. We gonna
Thank
circle
you.
back to
Love
you soon.
you.
All right, love you too. The great Chanel Helm, everybody, the leader of the Black Lives Matter Louisville. This sister bad, y'all. Y'all better follow her. Get your life. Let that bold black love shine through and through. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for coming on. All right,
Bye.
everybody. We are rushing to a photo finish. I wanted to make sure I brought this brilliant sister on to help us close the program, mostly because she's one of the most inspirational folks I know. She is from my home city of San Francisco, and has really become one of the most important consequential leaders here in the Bay Area. She is the great Latifah Simon. She is the president of the Akanati Foundation and advocate for civil rights and racial justice and juvenile justice. At age 19, she became the youngest woman. I want y'all to listen to me now. We got a legend now. She's the youngest woman to receive the MacArthur Genius Award. I'm telling you, this girl's so bad and tough. She ran for office, and she's one of the few, I don't want to misrepresent, but Black Women Transit Board Authority presidents in the country. This girl tough, y'all. You understand? And one day she gonna be my president or something, a governor or mayor or something. I have to move wherever she can run, because she is all right with me. The great Latifah Simon, welcome. Thank you so much for
Hey,
being here with us
Pastor.
at Mass.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I must say that we've had quite an interesting few weeks and few days here in the Bay Area, and
Yeah.
it's been a lot. But tell me a little bit of how you're feeling and how you're seeing things. I mean, you are one of the most important voices we got. So All I gotta do is step out the way, y'all. Y'all get ready because
Yeah,
you're about
I don't know. I don't know
something.
about that, but I was just listening to Miss Helm. What if sisters like that around the country had all the resources that they needed to bring up folk to fight for their liberation? I mean, I was listening to her and the clarity, the spirit. She uses spirit, strategy, history, dream for the present and for tomorrow and for 15 years and 30 years down the line. Like, it was just so beautiful to listen to her. And there are thousands of Miss Helms
Yes.
around the country. And they've been doing, we've been doing, they've been doing, she's been doing, you've been doing sort of this radical anointing of organizing people who have huge voices and strategy and plan and spirit, who've come back from the dead themselves, who get what could heal and cure our communities. And really, that's what this movement is really about. It's about moving people with real plans, not just liberation,
Right.
but for sanctity and real security. Folks who deeply love this idea of democracy, to the forefront of redesigning toxic systems that in their very bone marrow breed blood, racism, and tyranny. And it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time. And it's also, Pastor, a time where we're all confronting the realities of what so many of us deal with every single day. And this international reckoning of the Americans' original sin, while it's exciting, what it does, it shines a light to the terror that we have survived.
Yeah.
And while we're so, folks are rushing towards sort of a new normal where we are, we have to confound the idea that America is so awful to people with Black skin. For many of us, we know that, and this, literally at the back of your church, spiritually, literally, we see the realities of terror. So to organizers like Miss Helm, and I was raised by grandmothers and mothers, and when you get a certain age, you say Miss, you say Pastor. If you're an accountant, you say accountant Jerry. We have titles as African people. But I want to thank you for having me on and being in conversation with you. You are also my pastor. You married me. You gave blessings when my husband passed away. My children love your family, and you walk your talk in so many ways. So it's just an honor to be in community with you.
Well, I do believe God, the universe, the ancestors brings us all together because we need each other in these particular moments. We've been the last few weeks having certain philanthropic leaders on to just kind of talk a little bit about the importance of what does this moment require of all of us, wherever we sit, and you sit in so many different places. That requires courageous leadership, right? I mean, some people get positions and they just kind of love the title. But every position I've seen you step into, you literally move the football forward. Talk a little bit about what kind of leadership this moment requires from all of us, based off of what it's requiring from you in this moment.
I love that you asked me that, because when I was running for office, and folks, why BART board? Why would you run for a transit board? I believe that, if you could recall the prayers of your grandmother, they wanted things to change. And for us, the things that are most closest to us are the things that we need to be a part of running, right? Whether it's your local transportation system, your water system, your school board, the institutions that you come face to face with every single day. Folks literally are waiting for you not to read the packets, not to know when the meeting is, not to understand the policy or the budget process. And so in my 25 years, literally, I started full-time organizing at 17 and a half at the Young Women's Freedom Center as an organizer, became the executive director a couple of years later. And, as somebody who had to raise money and literally beg mostly white philanthropists to see the humanity of the work that we were doing. We were fighting in those early days for the juvenile probation department. I'm talking about in 98, to stop sending pregnant teenagers to their beds while they were having babies, or to stop the baby from being taken away from its mother 24 hours after the birth, or bringing that child, that incarcerated child, to a system and then paying someone else thousands of dollars to take care of that baby. We knew that none of the systems that were created to be kind or just parents, or systems that wanted to create safety, actually had our safety and sanctity. We saw it, we knew it, as did our grandmothers. So you told me, Pastor, when I was running for office, knowing that I'd been an organizer, knowing that I'd worked a little bit in government, trying to just reentry stuff, but that I was based on the ground, you told me, when you get into this office, you govern like you're going to get fired. And I'm trying to do that in philanthropy too. I'm like, waiting for the day. I'm waiting for the day that I just get fired, right? Meaning that work so hard, work hard, but work against the norm. Work against the norm and do everything possible to center the voices of the people that you care for most, to guide the decision making. Not just theory and not just case study, but every single time we're given an opportunity to physically sit at a table, and as an elected and also as a philanthropist, a paid one, I don't have my own money, I get to make decisions that literally affect people's daily lives.
Yes.
There is an honor to that. So it is important that I am in the same places that, and I speak of our grandmothers a lot. Our grandmothers worked 2 or 3 jobs, right? They worked at the church, they worked at the masjid, they worked at the synagogue. They cleaned hotel rooms, or they were secretaries. They came home, they took care of kids, right? They, like grandma's hand said, they counseled the young unwed mother. That's 4 jobs.
Right.
I want to work those 4 jobs too. And I want to work them sort of in empire with that same grace. I have made a decision to work in philanthropy. I've made a decision to work in government. I have made a decision to hopefully steer resources to the folks who have more audacity and courage than I will ever have, sort of to move empire. But they better know that they have someone inside who has exactly experienced the exact same pain, degradation, fear, my God, grief.
Yes.
And, King and Malcolm said it both best in different ways. We have to reimagine and also implement. So I can't anymore, in my now old age, in my 40s, I'm old. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that folks who have that courage and that tenacity are outside with the bullhorns. But I need them to also know that we have to build a bench of people who want to be on the inside, who not only have good ideas, but who actually know how to move inside structure. And that learning, I have fallen and got some crusty knees, but I think that it is my duty. It's my duty. So.
Yeah. Now, I just listened to you talk. I was speaking with Michelle Alexander yesterday or the day before about 99, the year I kind of came into organizing through my assault, and you mentioned 98. We've been doing this a long time, and I think what's so interesting. We were talking about this. People don't appreciate how mainstream some of the things we're fighting for now.
Listen,
we're totally like folks are talking about abolish the police today, and that's kind of like the most radical. But back when we were organizing, like just getting started, you're talking about like trying to change the women being shackled or while they're giving birth, or shut down CYAs, or change. Like there was not even language for that. No. Can you just talk about the how does one carry out work for the future in a present that other people can't imagine what you're talking about? Like how did you navigate some of that? Because I do think we sometimes, I tell some of the young activists today, you're trying to apply a standard today that did not exist 10, 15, 20 years ago on folks that were literally at the tip of the spear back then, even though 20 years later, it looks like, man, they were super, super conservative. I just wonder what will people think of us today? Like, you were just asking to abolish the police. How can you were asking to abolish the country? It's like, like,
I love
how
it.
do you,
I love the question, Pastor. And I'm a member of your church. I was raised Muslim. Ain't nothing to me right now so beautiful than a 12 o'clock sermon from this pastor, because you remind us that Jesus and many prophets had a righteous indignation.
yes.
They were furious at the tax man. He and other folk were furious at folks, the governors who were inflicting laws on the poor, that lepers didn't have access to healers. This is the same conversation.
Same conversation.
2,000 plus years later. One of the things that's important, and to your question, is, Ella Baker made so much sense when she talked about the young. There's something about young people being, and my grandmother would say, they're so close to heaven. They actually can see what we are deserving of, that glory, right? Like that milk and honey, that like what freedom and mobility and having food in your belly looks like, that no human being should sit in a cage, especially not a child, right?
Yeah.
Like they get that as you get older. And as, sort of you have experienced the hardening of the world, and as as systems and as people trespass against you, it's easy to feel the hardening, the reality of the world, where young people and our organizers who are they are putting their bodies on the line, not because they believe that these structures will do right by them. They believe that they must, that they got to, like, how could you not, want every child, in Kentucky to have health care? How could you imagine like a girl who's sleeping in her bed being murdered by the state, when we have a democracy that says that anybody accused of a crime, even though this beautiful young woman wasn't, should have a process,
right.
and that their tyranny shouldn't exist? Like, young people, they read the Constitution. They read who we used to call Stokey. They read the 10-point plan of the Black Panther Party, and they realize that it is exactly what America promises its children, right? Democracy,
yes,
liberty. And so young people, I believe so much. And as a youth organizer, I now, even in my roles, I look at unjust policy, and I'm figuring out how to just tinker with it just a little bit. How do I get this through this committee? How do I move this? And it's the young folk and their allies outside who are waiting to tear it up that make us move quicker. And I remember being that person. And I know that is what it requires. This nation would not be at a reckoning, because this nation kills Black men for no reason every day, not just because of video are we having this conversation, but because young people have decided not to let off of the lever. And young people in perpetuity, right? Because they get older and there's another generation. They will bring, and they have, sort of not only the nation, but dinner tables, corner stores, churches, mosques, workplaces, to where they are now, rethinking how they do business. We used to say, when we would be, in organizing meetings, there's nothing free based on this freedom we live in. Every single piece, every single scrap, there's blood running down the street so we can gain that. And I think that, the future and the present is reserved for the brilliance of the young. They see past what our hearts have been hardened to.
Woo! The great Latifah Simon. I can listen to her preach. Talk. Philosophize all day long. Y'all can see, we asked Latifah from time to time when we used to meet to come and just sit on a panel. We do panel conversations on Sunday. And I felt like I didn't even have to preach, because Latifah just went on her rant. She leaned forward like she did, and she started to channel all the ancestors and all her experiences, and it was and is fire. I'm
inspired by you.
Well, we paying it forward, back, and front to each other. I love you so much, and stay strong. Before you leave, just say a little bit about the Akinade Foundation. Let people know
Yeah.
what your foundation does, because you are indeed, and certainly Delane and all the folks, you all are really prioritizing putting this money and resources on the ground. So talk about Akonadi and what
Yeah,
you all are hoping to
I'll
do.
do it in 60 seconds. So, I came to Akonadi as president 3.5 years ago, but Akonadi was funding that actual campaign that I talked about 22 years ago. To stop the shackling of young girls. So
Yes.
for over 20 years, the Akonadi Foundation has been funding racial justice groups on the ground, mostly youth-led, focused on community change. And we now focus in Oakland. And we are funding sort of two large pieces of work. One, the anti-criminalization of children, but within that frame, we believe these organizers should, in fact, challenge the carceral system to abolish youth jails. Young people, despite how difficult and how many things that they've done, we know and we believe not just in reclaiming sanctity, they are children. And we can do a better job than put them in a cage. Cages don't heal. And similarly, that we have another system, which is the education system that in Oakland continues to fail Black young people daily, not because teachers aren't superb, but because we have far less not invested in systems to bring up young people holistically. We have amazing teachers, and yet for years we've had police in schools. We funded Jackie Byers' campaign for 10 years. And we're looking forward to supporting other sort of, folks who dream of systems that are about pure joy, that are about young people being able to experience the good even when they do wrong. It's exactly what all of our religions say we should do, that accountability should be handed with love. We need to actually do that in public systems. Public systems will not fix themselves. We have to fund the organizer. We have to fund the dreamer. We have to fund organizations that want to press beyond what people think our children deserve. So we're funding people of color-led groups to shake up the system. Akonadi.org.
Come on now. Look, y'all should want to support Akonadi.org's work just because Latifah Simon, all that energy. Look at all that energy. She amazing. Thank you so much for your leadership and for all the many ways you literally make it easier for all of us to do the work we do on the ground, whether you are funding or whether you are one of the elected officials. You don't make us have to fight unnecessary battles. And I pray we get more elected officials like the great Latifah Simon. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming to Mass for the People. We'll see you in the streets.
All right. That's
everybody. Well, I hope that you all appreciated the conversations. We had 3 dynamite women on our program today, really trying to help underscore not only the power of women's leadership, but also the unique ways, storytelling, organizing, and even the ability to kind of organize and resource and do leadership development. All of it adds up to literally helping to change and transform the worst conditions of our community. Please be reminded that you have a voice and you can tell your own story. You don't need a lot of help, particularly right now where content is queen. You can tell your story, and so much love and respect to Sister Amber for coming on and helping to really amplify that work. Organizing is critical. We're not going to win if we don't organize. And we have to, as Dr. King says, learn to organize as effectively as those who love war. We who love peace have to learn to organize as effectively as those who love war and violence. Chanel Helm and all of the Chanel Helms across the country who are waking up every day to organize, to defund the police, abolish the police, reallocate and refund so we can have a different kind of quality of life. That's what Mass for the People is about. We are using charity, your generosity, to help us be able to keep raising resources so we can outlast this evil pandemic that has been made worse because of the mismanagement of a terrible, wicked kind of administration that we all know must be defeated in November. And of course, the great Latifah Simon came on just to remind us of the importance of having dreams and supporting young people and people closest to the pain and just appreciating the power of changing systems, right? And doing it in a bold and courageous way. I hope you had a great time. I sure did. It gave me a little picker up for the day. But go and donate. Keep donating. LiveFreeUSA.org will help us keep raising more resources and getting free PPE out into the community. This is what we do. We mask for the people. We'll see you back next week. And we hope to have a lot more updates and things to check in about. But more than anything, please, everybody, this week, stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask, shelter in place. Don't put yourself or anyone else at risk, for we must survive the pandemic in order to rebuild on the other side. So this is Pastor Mike with Mask for the People. I'm out. Peace. Be blessed. Take care.